Bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Welcome to our channel, Aportes Afrocostarricenses y Diaspóricos. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Dr.
Thank you, Joan. After a couple of centuries since the Emancipation Declaration, what would you say to both of our invitees is the level of awareness among the youth in the Caribbean and particularly on your island that would ensure the continuation of this commemoration to the 21st century?
Or 2020, I would have to say now, marked the celebration of 182 years since the emancipation for the descendants of the ex-slaves. In this 21st century, it is nearly impossible for many of our children to even conceive, lest vaguely remember their ancestors from more than 2 generations ago. And so therefore they cannot feel the blood as it throbbed in the veins of the enslaved, the frustration, the inertia from defeat of the many insurrections. Can't call them revolutions because many of them were stopped. And with a combination of the loss of interest perpetuated by others from the rich and powerful, the younger person no longer value the importance of history nor cultural traditions. They cannot imagine the type of enslavement known as chattel slavery. Again, that kind of respect for the older ones now has to be brought into play again. We cannot allow them to go on. You must give respect to your elders and those who have passed on. Those are some of the things that we have to ensure we leave as the mark, or mark, because there's so many things that we could speak about with them, you know. They've not been able to see how people could have been bought and sold according to the whims and fancies of the owners. We just wouldn't be able to believe that. So when we look back, 1838, the first Emancipation Day in the British colonies, over 800,000 enslaved persons gained their freedom. 800,000. And that morning it broke with the tolling of the bells, and many of them went to the chapels and churches to give thanks, since they were still brought up under Christian principles, that they had finally gained their liberty. But what liberty? As I said, is a word. We have to get past just a word. We have to understand what that was. I am seeing that in the United States, they have a lot of museums being set up now to really remind us of those times. They have now set up one especially for lynching. It's a fantastic thing.
Yes, certainly, as we talk about young people, I think again, and I guess because we are all educators, the role of education and teaching the history and teaching the truth. They don't have that understanding, not all of them, yes, but it must not be at the whim and fancy of some historian who is interested in Africa, yes. It must be written into the curriculum across the board, yeah. You know, we cannot wait for Nancy or Carmen or Diana because of their understandings to do the work. Yes, they will do the work, but all historians, all literature English teachers must teach the history of Black people of the Caribbean, of Africa, yes? Because then if we do that, we are able to reduce that disconnect between Africa and the Caribbean and the rest of the diaspora, yeah? So that there is no problem for young people to show their connection through something as simple as their clothing, you know, and making certain choices, and that they will not be ridiculed for doing so. And be told to go back to Africa, as though Africa is this little old place that that they need to go and lose themselves and hide because there's nothing happening in Africa. Yeah. So it must begin at the earliest levels of education so that it is inculcated in young people early. Yes, the heritage, the sacrifices, the pain, the struggle, so that they understand how amazing we are for creating these societies in which we live. You understand? Because look at what we created from being disconnected from our souls, because that's what Africa is for many of us. Yeah. So that education must take place in a serious and deliberate way. It mustn't be something haphazardly done. Yes. It must not be something left to the few. Okay. It must be part and parcel of our education in the Caribbean, so that young people understand. Yeah. Happily, within the Caribbean, I am seeing that there is a celebration of Black History Month. So that's a beginning, that's a start. Yeah. But we have to do more. We have to do much more. Yes. And we have to be able to really let young people in particular understand that notion of emancipation. Yeah, governments cannot pay lip service and offer only a national day for us to walk up and down and jump behind a band in our fancy clothes. You know, it must be more than that. They must eradicate the structural barriers that prevent us from being who we are. And particularly now when we have a public health crisis.
Yes.
Young Black people must not feel powerless because they are jobless. Yes, the banks ignore them if they want to start up any meaningful project, right? Their voices are not heard. We ignore their contribution that they have to make. And they're not asking for handouts. They're just saying, we want a level playing field. We want to be able to access those resources based on our ability, yes, our resilience, yes, not on the color of our skin. Okay? And I think it is time for us to seriously pay attention to some of these issues. Yeah, in the Caribbean. Yes, we have made a lot of, you know, leeway in terms of, you know, being able and placing the emphasis on educating and providing free education to the masses, providing social services for our people. those things are important, but we have to do more. We have to look at the quality of the education, the quality of the social services. Who are the people we are training to provide these services to us? So young Black girls who find themselves in an unfortunate position of perhaps becoming pregnant early can access health services that do not make them feel unworthy. Yeah, that's the emancipation. But we also want to give them the education that would allow them to stay on task and not engage in sexual encounters they're not ready for, in terms of the consequences of those unprotected sexual, encounters. And, Nancy, whether or not it is a political move, when I see in Trinidad the Prime Minister of the country leading the group of people on the Emancipation March, I know there is some kind of significance to the day. So our leaders have to walk the walk instead of doing all of that talking. They must be the role models. But I don't take the political leaders as the only leaders within a society. And therefore, there are other people who are in serious leadership positions who must do the work they have to do. And that work must begin with the self. It must begin with the self. You have to emulate what you are saying. And then young people would see, because one thing we know about young people, they know when we are fooling them. Yes, they know when we are fooling them. But I feel comforted by some of the movements I see taking place with young people in the Caribbean. Yes, a number of them have reacted and responded to the new slogan of Black Lives Matter. They're taking it on board, and they're doing what they have to do in their own spaces. Yes, and okay, our experience of Blackness and emancipation may vary to what may be taking place in the United States, but we have our own issues in the Caribbean, and we have to deal with those issues, and we have to allow the young people to be able to make a contribution around how we deal with it. Yeah. So when we are talking about Black Lives Matter, people from other racial groups that have bought into privilege must not feel comfortable in our space in the Caribbean to write on social media certain things about Black people. Yes, they must not feel so comfortable to spew that garbage because they feel they can tell us anything and we will take it. Yes, and we have to be sensitive to the political climate now. There are certain things you cannot say in public anymore. Yes, and I am glad to see some of the reactions when some of them underestimated the ability to get away, and they have not been allowed to get away because of the responses and reaction, not only by older people, but by young people. Yes,